Tonight on the Fish Life Podcast, we are going to tell you the story of the greatest bass fishing lake of all time. You ready to wind this thing up and turn it loose?
Absolutely. I gotta tell you about this meme I saw the other day first.
You gotta tell me about it. Okay, let's go.
So I saw a meme. It was Avril Lavigne, and it said he was a skater boy, and then it showed a picture of a sling blade, and it said French fries potato boy. And I lost
French
my
fry potato boy.
You got any mustard?
Yes.
I like my biscuits and mustard.
Oh, that is great. That's a great meme right there, my man.
And welcome back to the Fish Life Podcast. We're here live at Fish Life Studios. Mile in if you're right. You're late for a guy.
Oh, is this what we're doing? That's what we're doing?
Do the whole podcast.
This is how
sling blade.
the whole I don't know if we should do that, but I think that's a great intro. Yeah, to the Fish Life Podcast. We're back, folks.
We're back.
Folks at home, we're back.
Catching hammerheads.
Yeah, I'm really excited about tonight's episode because, well, before we get started, change subject, change the tone a little bit. One of our good friends, one of the best friends of the channel, a good personal friend of mine, one of our Texas State Troopers, Officer Nick Moore, is with everything that's going on in the world right now, is getting caught up in some of this craziness. And obviously, I know Nick personally. He's a great man. He's a great officer. He does a great job of serving and protecting the public. He does it for the right reasons. And I've certainly had my thoughts and prayers with him, and I would ask that all of you have your thoughts and prayers with Nick as we go through these crazy times that just seem to be never ending. Just seems to be kind of a constant state in this country, or the world for that matter. It's just where we are with what's been going on. You know, kind of quit for a while, and then now here it is, you know, we're going back into these protests and riots. And these aren't protests, these are riots.
That's right.
So I don't speak on this type of stuff hardly ever on this channel, and the reason why is I hate giving credit to things and attention to things that I feel like one of our biggest mistakes with the way that we utilize social media as a society is we take this negative stuff. I mean, yeah, news has to be reported, you have to have information out there, but we take this negative stuff and we really over focus on the bad stuff, which gives that bad stuff attention, which gives those people that are doing the bad stuff what they wanted in the first place, which is attention, and gives them credibility somehow in some kind of a weird, messed up way. And so I really try to not talk about this stuff because I don't want to spread the awareness or word, because most of you guys that are going to listen to this are probably going to agree with our point of view on it, but some aren't. And for those people that aren't, we're just giving this deal validation and credit. So I really try not to talk about it very much. But for the record, since, you know, I do have some of you guys that follow what we do, you want to know where we stand on this. So for the record, when it comes to these protests, the first thing that I want to say is I don't think that there's any doubt. I have been staunchly against most of these riots and protests over police brutality, because the vast majority of these cases were people that were doing something wrong. Like, the one that stands out in my head is the Baton Rouge guy that was a felon trying to sell stolen product outside of a convenience store, had a gun in his waist, and then somehow he gets into a fight with a cop and gets shot because he's reaching for a gun, and the cop's the bad guy there. Mm-hmm. Like, that's dumb. Like, why are we protesting that? Like, that guy deserved what he got, you know? And that's the majority of these so-called wrongful killings. There is a justified use of force in a lot of them. Kneeling on someone when you have them cuffed and detained, and kneeling on their neck, I understand use of force and body and angles and how to manipulate the human body to get control of it. I've been through some rudimentary training on that, actually, from my time in the Marine Corps. Yes, that's a good way to get control of someone. Boy, that's professional, Chris.
Man, I thought I already sounded.
Yeah, I know. We always thought, way to go.
Yeah.
But kneeling on someone and taking control of their neck, obviously, in their head, is a good way to take control of their whole body.
Correct.
But kneeling on someone's neck after you have them handcuffed, detained, under control, there's never a reason for that. To do it to a length where you actually cause bodily injury and, you know, long-lasting bodily injury or harm, let alone cause death, man, that That's horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That is a horrible misuse of force. That police officer, I believe, all speculation here, probably got a little caught up in the moment. Probably got a little, emotions get elevated in those situations. But it's on him, and it's on every other officer, like my good friend Nick. Mm-hmm. It's on them to be professional. It is their job to be professional and keep their perspective when emotions get elevated. They are supposed to, that's their job. That's what they're there for.
That's right.
Is to serve and protect, not punish and dole out brutality. I mean, that was not okay. And that guy, he's going to get punished, I believe. I don't believe the American justice system is going to let that go, obviously. I don't think that's going to happen. To go out and act like this is something that happens every day, it's not. When you think about all the millions of interactions that happen every day between police officers and citizens, obviously 99.99999% of them are good, or the police do their job in a professional manner and move on. They do a great job for us. Mm-hmm. Nobody, no industry. Guess what? Not every fishing guide trip goes well.
Right.
There's customers that are very dissatisfied with their fishing guide trips.
That's right.
At times, there is one. You have those customers. We all do. Not every police interaction is that cop isn't always gonna do everything exactly how he should. Should he have done that? No. Should he serve prison time? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely he should. He should be punished.
To the full extent of the law.
I would say to the fullest extent, because this was a very extreme case. I always hesitate to say that without knowing all the details or hearing all the evidence or all the circumstantial evidence. I want to get a good, fair judgment before I make a bold statement like that, but that wasn't right. And he should be punished. That being said, none of these violent protests, these aren't protests, these are riots. None of these violent riots have ever accomplished anything. You people that are out there rioting, you're not doing anything that hasn't been done before. Obviously the Rodney King deal, there was huge riots in LA after that. And I understand the feeling of anger amongst the community that feels like they're not being heard. I get that. I promise you, I felt like I was in a community that wasn't heard for 8 years in very recent history. Okay? Especially when it comes to like socialist policies as far as Obamacare. So like, my voice wasn't heard then. Okay? Granted, I'm not dying. I get it. Right. But I understand that the frustration coming from that community. But never in the history of the world has violent rioting resulted in positive change. It's never happened. Like, what do you think this is going to accomplish? You know what results in positive change? Forceful, educated discussion. Peaceful protests have resulted in positive change.
That's right.
Educated discussion has resulted in the majority of our positive change in politics, in policy. If we want to, this obviously there's a lot of racial implications, or at least that's how people are perceiving it. Well, look at Martin Luther King, the greatest social justice warrior in the history
all time.
Of America.
Yeah, that's right.
He never once condoned violence. And he effected more positive change for the black community than any other man that's ever existed. I think most people would agree with that.
Well,
but he was educated. He educated himself, and he took the responsibility upon himself to educate his community and educate those outside of his community that didn't quite understand their plight, to stand up for those and educate everybody. And that is how you affect positive change. There's never any reason to go violate somebody else's rights because you feel like your rights are being violated.
That's right.
That's not okay. That's just not okay. You have a right to be heard. You have a right to protest. You have a right to do basically anything you want to in this country that doesn't impact or hurt or affect other people's physical well-being or personal property.
That's right.
Well, obviously rioting, and there's all kinds of people getting hurt in these riots.
Yeah.
From both sides.
Oh yeah.
From both sides. There's officers getting hurt. Hell, they're rioting and throwing rocks and breaking windows on the firemen's trucks. Yeah. Why are you mad at the firemen?
Yeah. Well, I know.
These people are just looking for an excuse to be idiots. They're bad people. They're making bad decisions. And I hope every one of them, I hope they get jail time. Because just like that officer was wrong and he deserves to go to prison for what he did, these idiots that are stealing and robbing and violating people's rights, they deserve to go to prison too. So,
eye for an eye leaves two people blind.
That is my personal stance on it. Y'all probably didn't care, but that's my personal stance on it. That's where I stand on it. And to be honest with you, Nick's a really good friend of mine that is in law enforcement. We also have, oh man, I'm having a brain cramp on his name. There's a gentleman that lives here in Van that fishes a lot of tournaments on Fork that's also a state trooper. Oh God, I can't think of his name.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
But anyway, all of our law enforcement officers, man, we are wishing nothing but the absolute best for y'all. We hope that every one of y'all comes through this safely. And I would personally like to take this time to look right into this camera and tell each and every one of our law enforcement officers, from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely appreciate everything that y'all do to help keep our communities safe. I'm very aware that, yes, there are mistakes made by people in your line of work, but I understand that 99.9999999% of you guys do a great job in your interactions with the public and really take pride in striving to do it professionally and keep us safe. And we can't ever thank you enough for that. We really, really can't. So thank y'all. All right. Now let's move on to the fun stuff. The rest of the podcast tonight is going to be awesome. We're going to talk about Lake Fork being the greatest big bass lake of all time. We're going to show a fine example of it that just happened within the last week. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about the history. We're going to really break down why is Lake Fork called the Goat Lake.
Because it is the goat.
Because it is the greatest trophy bass lake of all time. Mm-hmm. It is.
I went off on a rant before this podcast started.
And something that, Jonathan Bowling has moved down here from Broken Bow this year, and he's been doing an amazing job. By the way, folks, if you want to book a trip with John Bowling, be sure and reach out to us at yourlakeforkguide.com. We'll get you set up with young John. He does have June dates available very soon. He's got some dates open in the very near future. So if you guys want to fish with John, please hit us up, because as you'll hear in the rest of this podcast tonight, Johnny the Kid is kind of doing things in a big way.
He can catch him a little bit.
He has done he's exceeded all of the expectations I had for him when he came down here, as far as the way he's catching fish, the way he's conducting business. Like, he is a phenomenal young fisherman. He's a really good guy. He's a really good guy. He's fun to fish with. Can't recommend him enough. So basically what happened was John had one of those days, and Lake Fork will do this. If you fish Lake Fork enough, Lake Fork will show you once in a while, you'll get this day where it's like, what just happened?
This is what it's all about.
Like, yeah, we go to Lake Fork and we catch a 7-pounder here and an 8-pounder there, and once in a great while we catch a 10-pounder, and we catch 4 and 5-pounders on a daily basis most of the time. And you just don't do that in many other places. And you go and you see all that stuff, and it's like, holy cow, Lake Fork's amazing. But then every once in a while, it really opens up. You really find that right group of fish that are grouped up together somewhere, and you might catch multiple fish over 7 or 8 pounds in a row. Mm-hmm. Or you might sit there and catch, 20 or 30 bass off one spot sometimes, and like all of them be between 3 and 7 pounds. Like, there's some stuff that happens on Lake Fork that just doesn't happen everywhere else. Well, John experienced one of those days the other day, and he actually texted me while it was going on, and he was like, Lake Fork is just blowing my mind. I had no idea. Like, I've always, he's come down to fish this lake for about the last 6 years consistently. Yeah. And he said, man, I've always known this was a great fishery. I've always known how big, it's huge bass in there. I've caught some huge bass out here. He goes, it blew my mind. I've never seen what I'm seeing today. Mm-hmm. So let's get J-Bo to give us a call, because where John lives, he's got to call us through Messenger because he's in the woods over there around Lake Fork, and service is a bit sketchy. So we'll get John on the phone, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a little context here on what happened. Was John had a 40-pound bag the other day. 40.
He texted me and said, dude, today was dumb. We caught 40. And I said, really? And then he sent
we caught 40 fish, 40 pounds of best 5.
Yeah. Then he sent me the pictures, and I was like, cool.
Yeah, 40 pounds of best 5, and we will show you guys some pictures. Here he is now. Let's see if we can get him dialed in here. J-Bo, talk to me, old son.
What's going on, guys? What's up?
Hang on just a second, buddy. All right, say something now. Let me check your volume here.
All right, what's that?
Talk a little bit. Just say some random stuff.
Testing 1 2. You're weird, and the guy sitting next to you kind of talks like a girl sometimes.
Yeah, we got you. Yeah, heard that. So Johnny the Kid is the official nickname for Mr. John Bowling. He's live with us on the podcast here. John, we've told the folks that you had an amazing day. We're kind of talking about how amazing Lake Fork is as a trophy bass fishery, and we're going to go in depth after we get done talking to you. We're really going to go in depth on some of the data and statistics. But,
right.
Man, the other day you had a real special day. Tell me about it.
Man, that was a special day. I had some guys that came down from this might be wrong, but I think they was from north. Where was they from?
Out of state?
Northeast Kansas.
Northeast Kansas, okay.
7 hours to get here. They was down here for 4 days. They fished the first 2 days, caught like 2 fish the whole time. And I could tell pretty much that morning when we left that we was going to have a really good day. And we started out, we was throwing, we went shallow for the first hour and a half, 2 hours. Caught 2 or 3, nothing real big. And I told them about 9 o'clock, I said, hey guys, let's go out deep. Let's go look offshore. Let's go check some of those really long points, some of them humps. So we did. We idled for probably 30 minutes. And I was running to a spot, and there was one boat that was on it. I was like, you know what? We'll leave here. We'll come back in about an hour. There was one other spot that was by it, probably a quarter mile from it. And I was like, let's run over here real quick. I was like, let's just go see. And it's a spot that I've been checking about once a day for the last 2 weeks. Have not seen anything on it hardly. We roll over it, and I go, oh. And they're like, what? And I was like, let me check this one more time.
Yeah,
roll
so
right back over it, and it's the largest dots that I've ever seen. Like, all it is it's just a super long point that runs way out in the lake. Top of where they was setting was probably 17 foot of water, and I seen 5 dots, and 3 probably, yeah, it was probably no, I'm gonna say probably 4 of those dots was really big dots. And I was like, let's stop and let's just kind of see if they'll bite, blah, blah, blah. Well, I gave them both a worm that is pretty well known around the lake as Big Perm.
See, you didn't tell me this yet. I did not know that y'all caught these fish on Big Perm.
They was off. One was on a watermelon red, and the other was on, what is it? It's kamikaze. And we pull up on them. My guy cast out there. We're probably there 5 minutes, and they catch like a 4-pounder. I was like, cool, blah, blah, blah. Well, the guy, all we felt was the boat shake. And we looked back, and this dude is bowed up. And I looked back, and I was like, this is a big fish. Thing comes up and jumps. And we're all shocked. Like, we're all literally shocked at this fish. Get it in the net. Thing goes a little bit over 9.5. We're hooping and hollering. We're taking pictures. And we sat there a little bit longer. We caught one more on it. About probably 7.5 pounds. Now,
don't say it. Don't say it so nonchalantly, John.
Then we caught like another one, and it was like 7 or something.
We just caught another little one about 7.5 pounds.
Well, okay, here's the whole story. That fish was pretty cool. This dude sets the hook on this fish. He gets hung up. Like, this dude is literally freaking hung up. What had happened was he had got a bite. The fish had him either wrapped up on a stump, whatever that it was down there, had this guy freaking wrapped up. So we did the whole freaking guide deal. I walked up on the front deck. We started easing up her to it. as soon as I literally freaking had his rod, I was like, dude, you're not hung here. That dude freaking comes up to the boat. It's like a 7.5 pounder. Well, then we ease right back up there at our little spot. We're sitting there for probably another five minutes or so. And he's like, because after that, we hadn't got a bite. He was like, should we change lures? I was like, no. I said, y'all need to drag that worm as slow as y'all possibly can. Like, as slow as you can. And that's what they was doing. And I mean, he got bit right at the boat. He sets the hook on this fish. We never even seen the fish. And this thing comes up by the boat. And I literally, as soon as I seen it, like literally right at the bottom of the boat, me and him both at the same time went, oh my God. That thing was so close to 10, but she was so freaking skinny. We had 2 9-pounders and a 7 and a 5-1 in the same spot within 35 minutes. I've never seen nothing like that. I've heard people always say, like with Lake Fork, like you can pull up on the right place, right time, and they're there. And we got a true freaking taste of it.
Yeah.
It was a special day. That's the only way to say
now,
it. It was a special day.
Now y'all continued on that day, and y'all actually caught a couple other bigger fish, not 9-pounders, but y'all had did y'all have an 8-pounder that day as well?
Yes, we went in for lunch at that point, and we went back out and we idled around. And I mean, you're finding fish offshore, but it's not like 9 fish here, 10 fish here. And I found a little bitty pot of fish. It was probably 4 fish. We stopped on it. We're sitting there, and he caught an 8. I don't remember what it was. It was like an 8.5 pounder on a 6 cents. I think that was a 1/2 ounce hyper jig. Caught it on that, and we're sitting there probably 5 minutes. And he sets a hook and he says net. But the way that he was acting with it, it was like, I was thinking, oh, it's probably not like another 4.5 pounder. Then that thing comes up and jumps. And we get it in the boat, and we ended the day with a 5-fish bag of like 40 pounds, and it was insane.
Yeah, I think the final number you sent me was 41 something.
Yeah, it was insane. Like, we ended up going in a little bit early, I think it was, just because they was like, dude, let's just, no, okay, this is what it was. They was like, dude, let's go in early. We've had a great day. I said, we ain't going in yet. I was like, these fish are biting, they're hungry, we're going to stay out. We didn't load up till later that evening. But, dude, it was just an awesome day with some freaking awesome guys, and I've never seen nothing like that. It was just pure insanity is all that was.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see all the pictures of this, actually, the evening this podcast is airing, we're recording this on Sunday night, but this podcast is airing on Tuesday, and me and John, you can go to me or John's Facebook and Instagram. We're going to have these pictures posted on both of our Facebook and Instagram. We're posting them on Tuesday evening, the same evening this podcast is airing. So if you want to see some pictures of some mega donks, some old donks, go check out Bigfoot. Is it Bigfoot Guide Service? What's your Facebook stuff?
Bigfoot Bass Guide.
Bigfoot Bass Guide.
Bigfoot Bass Guide, and that's on Instagram, same thing, right?
No, if you go onto there, it's just my name. That's all it is.
On Instagram, John Bowling. Okay. Yeah, so you can see him at John Bowling on Instagram, Bigfoot Bass Guide on Facebook. You can also see him at Your Lake Fork Guide on Facebook, Your Lake Fork Guide on Instagram. We're going to post these pictures on all 4 of those pages on Tuesday evening when you guys are hearing this podcast. So please go check them out. And like I told you guys before we got John on the phone, if y'all want to book a trip with John, which apparently you might kind of want to do, just in case this does happen again.
Hey, you think those customers will be back?
Yeah, those guys will be back. So if you guys want to get in on the fun, John does have some dates available in the very near future in June. And you just hit us up at yourlakeforkguide.com. We will 100% get you set up with John and get out there and have a good time. John, so we caught this 41-pound bag on Big Perm, which is actually it's made by Smash Tech Custom Baits. It's called the Magnum Crawler.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I haven't asked you this yet, but I'm sure that you were probably rigging it on the 5/8 ounce 6 cents Divine Shaky Head with that big 7/0 hook.
Yes, sir. That is the rig.
That's the. I mean, I say this all the time. It's probably my most consistent from like May all the way through September, throughout the hot months of the year, that is probably my most consistent day in, day out bite getter. I probably catch more fish on that rig with that Smash Tank Magnum crawler and that 6 cents big shaky head than I do on anything else throughout the summer months.
It just gets bit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you, like, right now, I'm actually looking on, I've got 5 of those rigged up right now, literally in my boat. That's the only thing
He's
that
got 5 of them rigged up on the deck of his boat.
that I've thrown for a week.
5 rigged up on the deck of his boat. Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, man, it's a really good bait. And listen, you know, obviously, you know, we work with Smash Tech a little bit. Here's the deal, though, guys. I used to fish the Magnum trick worms. And at the end of the day, when we're on a guide trip, we're going to throw the baits that are going to catch the fish. Do we throw a lot of 6 cents baits? Yes, we do, because they work, because they catch it. Do we throw that 6 cent shaky head? Yes, we do, because it has the biggest, stoutest hook of any shaky head we can find to throw on those bigger plastics out deep. But that Magnum crawler, there's something to that worm. The big deal is it has no salt in it, which gives it more buoyancy, helps it stand up on the bottom. And what John was talking about, the advantage of that bait is how slow you can fish it.
Because it never stops standing up.
You can literally dead stick it on a deep spot and let it just sit there, and the worm will stay standing up. And
if there's any kind of current at all, it's just going to sit there and wave.
Wind current's going to make that tail sit there and dance, standing up on that shaky head. So you can go so slow. These big bass on Lake Fork that see 1 million baits a day, they get graphed 15 times a day by 35 different boats, whatever it is. But, you know, those fish can be a little more reluctant and lethargic to bite. And having a worm that creates, you know, a good big profile, it's like a finesse presentation, but it's a big profile bait at the same time, and you can fish that slow and keep it in their face for that long. I really feel like that one particular worm gets a lot of bites because of all those reasons.
Yes, yeah, I mean, because pretty much what we found out that day is you had to fish it super slow to where that you was just feeling bump. You don't want to feel that. You want to feel just one bump and let it set.
And you're talking about like as you drag it along those hard spots on the bottom. You don't want to drag it too fast. You want to feel like one little bump. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly.
Yep, that's the deal, man. Well, dude, that's an amazing job by you. I mean, obviously there's a lot of luck involved when you catch a 41-pound bag. But man, congratulations to you. Congratulations to your customers. Awesome job on executing on the opportunity that Lake Fork gave you. And man, I'm proud of you, dude. That's a really, really unbelievable day.
Yes, I mean, dude, that basically that I've just never seen anything like that before, and to actually get to see that happen,
yeah,
dude, it was awesome. Like, I got to watch 2 guys catch literally the largest fish they've ever seen. To me, that was just cool. Like,
yeah,
that was just awesome.
Oh yeah, especially them guys being from Kansas, they've never seen anything close to that.
No,
exactly.
That just doesn't exist where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
Not even close.
No.
Yeah, so that's amazing, man. That's amazing, D. Well, man, like I said, buddy, we're super proud of you. We're gonna go ahead and let you go, but dude, I couldn't be happier for you. And awesome job, my man. And I'm glad to hear that you caught it on the Smash Tag worm. That's good. That's I know that worm works really well, and I know that'll be good because we'll get some people to, you know, I'm sure some people are gonna go out and try that worm now after hearing this story, and maybe they'll catch some new PBs and slow down enough. Maybe they'll have the day of their life like you did. And that's kind of the reason we do things the way we do, because whether you book a trip with us or not, we want to help everybody catch more and bigger fish to the best of our ability. And I guarantee you get offshore and start dragging that big pirate worm around, you're gonna catch some big fish.
Facts.
Oh yeah.
Big facts.
Yeah.
Oh show.
All right, brother, man. Y'all have a good evening. I will holler at you tomorrow because me and you are gonna be filming this week again. But I appreciate you calling in and spending time to talk to us, dude. Thank you.
Yes, sir, man. We'll see y'all later.
All right, later, bud.
41-pound bag.
41-pound bag. Yeah.
Oh,
so
I gotta do this, bro. This is.
There was a spider on the wall, folks at home.
I cannot.
Chris, you're so scared of those spiders.
I'm telling you, man, I can't.
It's so funny how scared you are of spiders.
Dude,
it cracks me up. It just cracks me up.
There's something about them, man, I just don't like.
And for those of you watching on this, I told y'all can go see some pictures on the Facebook page, and you can. But we'll just show you a couple. There's one. There's another.
Oh, hammerheads.
And I don't even know what the weights are on all these fish, but I mean,
Big.
this is, yeah, the weights are heavy. The official weight on these fish is super heavy. Sorry for those listening on the audio format right now. We're literally scrolling through pictures from this one day that John had showing people some of that was
Donkey.
just a few of the fish right there that he caught that day. I mean,
catching fish like that, that's like going to the gym and working out.
yeah, that's impressive. And, you know, so it all relates to the topic of, is Lake Fork really the goat lake? And, you know, you hear some negative outlook on Lake Fork from people a lot of the time. You do. I mean, there's a lot of people that come to Lake Fork and they struggle and are like, man, Lake Fork doesn't live up to the hype. Lake Fork sucks. Well, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
It absolutely doesn't.
But like those guys for 2 days caught 2 fish.
That's right.
They drove down 7 hours from Kansas and been there for 2 days, caught 2 fish, and they were about to go home and say, man, Lake Fork sucks. You with the right guide, happen to have that right circumstance where you hit the right spot at the right day.
Mm-hmm.
I bet those guys will be chasing that experience for the rest of their life, and they'll keep coming down to Lake Fork. And most days they're not, obviously, they may never have another day like that again in their life. They may not. Most people don't. But Lake Fork is the greatest trophy bass lake of all time.
I think people get too wrapped up in, you're not going to get, you can go fish Lake Tyler and you can get 100 bites in a day. You can go Lake Fork and for no reason at all, get 3 bites on the same day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
factors.
There's a lot of things that come into play on that. Not the least of which is the amount of pressure per square acre that you get out there.
The most in the country.
Yeah. And so let's talk about some of the negative of Lake Fork. Let's dig into that because people come here and they struggle. I mean, we all struggle on Lake Fork from time to time. Lake Fork can be one of the toughest lakes to get a bite on as far as bass fishing goes. The deal is, every other lake that has a reputation anywhere close to Lake Fork, a Gunnersville, a Rayburn, Toledo, Falcon, Okeechobee, Clear Lake, the Delta.
Astronomically bigger.
I'm trying to think of any other lakes that are close to that type of reputation.
I mean, the Delta.
I mean, the Tohos and the Harris Chains and, you know, all of these bodies of water are like 100,000 acres plus.
Right.
Falcon's 80,000.
Right.
Fork is only 27,000 acres.
Right.
So you have people traveling from all over the country, literally from all over the world. I've had people in my boat from Japan that come to fish Lake Fork. And we have people from overseas, you know, Italy, Japan. People come from all over the world to fish Lake Fork. Only having 27,000 acres and having a reputation that big where this many people flock to it means that these fish literally get more pressure per square acre than any other fish on earth. On top of that, it's not just that they get more pressure, bro, it's the quality of pressure they get.
Right.
Like, people that are traveling from across the country and across the world to fish Lake Fork don't suck at bass fishing.
No, not at all.
These are good fishermen. On top of that, we have more full-time largemouth bass fishing guides on Lake Fork than any other lake on earth.
Correct.
And it's not even close.
No, not even.
The proximity to DFW, the difficulty of the fishery, the trophy bass nature, all that combines to make this the biggest guide business for bass fishing there is on planet Earth.
Correct.
And again, all these lakes are much bigger. I mean, the bottom line is these lakes that are 100,000 acres, Toledo 180,000 acres, they have a lot more fish in them because of how big they are. Like, there's just a bigger source of fish in a bigger body of water like that. So these fish are getting the quality pressure. And amongst these fishing, like, all these fishing guides are pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And some of them are, like, extremely good. Like, some of them, like, Mark Pax won FLW Tour Major. James Niggemar fished on the Elite Series forever and ever. Brooks Rogers was a great Elite Series angler back in the day. Like, Richard McCarty was a really good Elite Series angler back in the day. Like, a lot of, I mean, there's so many Bassmaster Classic appearances and tour wins and tour qualifications. And, you know, now we've got Lee Lifeson that's on the Bassmaster Elite Series. He's from here. He's been guiding here for a long time. Man, it's not a tour level event every day, but it's right underneath it.
That's right.
And for the size of lake that you got about a 40 or 50 boat just under the level of the Elite Series that fishes Lake Fork 200 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's 200 days of really close to Elite Series competition on Lake Fork every day. That's the kind of pressure we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, having the numbers of people coming in from all over the country. So the pressure factor on Fork is astronomical. I mean, it's just unbelievable. There's nothing out there that doesn't get fished by multiple people that's a good piece of structure. Especially anything that's good and obvious on avionics, it gets hit by everybody.
That's right.
And so these bass that are pulling up, like you might have 3 bass pull up on a point, they're going to get grabbed 3 times and then get caught one of those times and then they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 more pull up. I mean, it's unbelievable the kind of pressure it gets. On top of that, okay, you have a very high influence because of the stocking program from Texas Parks and Wildlife. Thank you, Texas Parks and Wildlife.
That's right.
You have a very high percentage of Florida strain influence. Well, Florida strain bass they can go off and on more so than northern strain. Northern strain are notorious for biting all the time.
We'll call them finicky.
Yeah, Florida strain or sensitive, finicky, whatever we call it. You go to Florida and people go to Florida and there's days where you just can't hardly buy a bite. Same deal at Fork. We got Florida strain bass. I mean, it's predominantly Florida strain bass that are in Fork.
Sometimes they just up in their feelings.
And they are a little more prone to be a little more temperamental and just decide not to bite. Sometimes for random reasons, it seems like.
That's right.
They just don't bite. And then when they do bite, it's like, oh my God, it's like what John experienced. So, so you have that Florida strain influence. Then on top of that, you've got one of the most fertile, densely packed food sources and variety of food sources maybe of any lake in the world. These fish have unbelievable amounts of threadfin shad, gizzard shad, yellow bass. They eat crappie. They eat sand bass.
Perch, bluegill.
Brim. We got brim. Dude, brim spawning everywhere this year. We got a great brim population now. A few years ago we didn't have that great brim. Now we do. So they have anywhere they want to go. They want to roam the bank, they can eat brim all day. They want to be offshore, they can eat crappie and yellow bass and sand bass. They want to run some grass lines, they can eat some gizzard shad. Like they can eat any way, anywhere, anytime they want to. So they're never hungry. Like these fish, very rarely is a Lake Fork fish a hungry bass.
That's what I tell a lot of my friends when they call me and they say, "Man, just came back from Fork. How was it?" "Man, they didn't bite real good." I said, "Well, let me tell you something. They ain't got to eat when you're there. I promise you."
They don't ever have to eat in Lake Fork because of the fertility in the densely packed bait population and variety of bait that we have in the lake. So you have all those factors that go into making it challenging. Okay, makes it challenging. Despite all of that, this lake continues year in, year out, drought, full, grass, no grass, it doesn't matter. This lake continues every single year to produce days like John just experienced. Last year, I had a day we caught 40 pounds, 12 ounces for our best 5. Other guides have 40-pound bags. I think Lee had one this year. It just continues to kick out these fish, and the numbers of 10 plus pound fish that it kicks out, I would say Lake Fork's having a little bit of a down year for double digit fish, but still the number of giant 10, 11, 12 pound bass and even over 13 just every single year this lake kicks out is just like, it's insane, folks. It's insane. It's really insane when you consider how it has to hold up to all the pressure that it gets.
That's right.
And if you go back and look at the history of it, and you're talking about greatest of all time status, well, greatest of all time status, okay, is it the greatest big bass lake right now? I believe it still is the greatest trophy bass lake right now today. I don't think it's the greatest bass fishing lake. I don't think it's the easiest lake to go catch fish on. I don't think it's the easiest lake to go get numbers of bites on. I don't even think it's the most consistent, like on catching a best 5 bag every single day. I think there's days where you're going to catch a better best 5 bag on a Lake of the Pines or somewhere else,
That's right.
But it is the greatest trophy bass lake still to this day, in my opinion. And if you're talking about greatest of all time, you have to throw in the history factor, okay? Because the history factor, Lake Fork is so far above and beyond anything else that's ever existed. If you really look into the data, it's just inarguable. Like, You cannot deny that Lake Fork's the greatest trophy bass lake of all time if you look at the history of it.
So I'm pulling.
So let's pull up some history, Chris.
That's what I'm doing right now.
So let's give a little bit. So Lake Fork, way back in the day, in the 80s, when Lake Fork had first gotten full pull, a few years after that, Lake Fork kicks out a state record, 17.65 pounds. Mr. Mark Stevenson, who still guides on Lake Fork to this day.
That's right.
Caught that fish on a flipping jig in a creek channel intersection in 1986. Texas Parks and Wildlife was about to launch the Share-a-Lunker program. If you don't know what Share-a-Lunker program is, if you catch one over 13 pounds, you can donate it to Texas Parks and Wildlife. They spawn it in captivity, then use the offspring of that. They spawn it with a pure Florida male.
That's right.
In captivity, then use the offspring to stock lakes across the state, including the lake that it came from. Well, they were about to launch this program. Mark catches this new state record fish, turns it into Texas Park and Wildlife, and it becomes Share-a-Lunker #1. And they actually launched the program a few months early because of the opportunity they had with this new state record. What a better way to launch a program like that than with a new state record?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
When's that opportunity going to happen? All the stars lined up there. So, Ethel is what Mark chose to name her.
That's right.
Starts the Share-a-Lunker program, and then Johnny Morris buys Ethel from the state and displays her in the Bass Pro Shop's home headquarters store in Branson, Missouri. And Ethel lived there for a long time. And people from across the country came to see Ethel.
That's right.
Which was really cool. But Ethel did a lot. Mark Stevenson and Ethel and the Share-a-Lunker program and Lake Fork did a lot for the state of Texas. If you think about in the world of bass fishing, Texas is kind of regarded as the best place for bass fishing on earth. And Ethel, an argument can be made that Ethel is the reason why it is. Because that program started, and through that Share-a-Lunker program and stocking these Florida strain trophy fish genetics across the state, there's no denying that fishing has gotten way better across the state of Texas in the last, what's it been now, 34 years.
Yeah.
It's been about 34 years since the Share-a-Lunker program started, and the fishing's definitely gotten bigger. There's a lot of lakes that kick out bigger bags than they ever have.
Yeah, because that was what, November of...
Like 86, I think it was.
I got it right. Yeah, November of 86, late November.
There you go. So
A couple days after Thanksgiving.
there you go. So that's how that went down. But yeah, so that started Lake Fork. Hey, that's a feather in your cap for greatest bass lake of all time. A, you got the state record. B, you started the program that affected change for the entire state.
That's right.
Made the entire state better at bass fishing, better quality fisheries. Then we have another. It was 1991, 5 years later. 92, 6 years later, excuse me. Well, 5.5, because this happened, what time of year? January? February?
January 24th, 92.
So really it was 5 years later. It was 5 years and 2 months later.
Right.
Barry St. Clair
That's right.
catches 18.18 pound new state record. Again, Lake Fork, another state record. That one is still the state record to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Having two state records, having the top two bass, having the Share-a-Lunker program that affected change for the whole state get started, that's two really big deals to make you the greatest trophy bass lake of all time.
That's right.
That's two really big feathers in your cap. But wait, there's more, folks. Chris, how many of the top 10 bass in the state of Texas came from Lake Fork?
7.
Out of the entire state of Texas, the 10 biggest bass that have ever been caught in the whole state, 7 of them came from one place.
That's right.
And that's Lake Fork. The whole rest of the state has put 3 in that top 10. Lake Fork put 7 in it. Chris, out of the top 50 bass ever caught in the state of Texas, how many came from Lake Fork?
30.
30. The rest of the state did a little better job percentage-wise keeping up. They went from 30% to 40%.
Right.
But still, 60% of the top 50 all came from one lake. One lake is greater than the rest of the state combined. I know when the Share-a-Lunker program hit 500 Share-a-Lunkers, that was after I had moved here permanently. When the Share-a-Lunker program hit 500 entries of 13-pounders, a little over half of them, it's 250 something.
Yeah, 250 something.
We couldn't decide whether it was 53 or 56 earlier,
Yeah.
but 250 something of the 13-pounders that had been donated at the time had all come from one place, Lake Fork. Again, even on a huge number like 500, Lake Fork was a little bit better than every other lake in the state of Texas combined.
I mean,
that should be enough, folks. That should be enough. Y'all want some more evidence? We can keep going. Should we gonna keep going?
Yeah, we can.
I think we should keep going. That should be enough for you to go, okay, yeah, Lake Fork's the greatest trophy bass lake of all time. But we're gonna add some more. Professional tournament fishing, the best of the best. Bassmasters, FLW, now MLFBPT. These guys fish the best fisheries in the country every year.
That's right.
Every year. They go to some of the best fisheries all over the place, all over the country, every single year. They go to Rayburn, I don't know, 50 times, 100 times now they've gone to Rayburn. Yeah. Toledo, I don't know, 40, 50 times. Been to Falcon a few times. Gunnersville like every year. Okeechobee every year. Clear Lake, Delta. They've been to all of them many, many, many times. Mm-hmm. All of them. We've had tour level events at all of these major legendary fisheries. We've had tour level events many times over. Lake Fork has a special slot limit. You cannot retain a fish between 16 and 24 inches on Lake Fork. Therefore, for most of the history of tour level bass fishing, tour level tournaments don't come to Lake Fork because guys can't put the big ones. They can't put a 6 pound in the box. The 3 to 8 or 9 pound fish in their live well.
Yeah.
Technology comes along with the way in the boat format. We start having, first we had the Toyota Texas Bass Classic in like 2006, 2007, 2008. They came to Lake Fork, but it wasn't the same format. It wasn't best 5. It was a team event. It was different. So that wasn't an apples to apples comparison. So really the first time we had some of the best fishermen on earth fish a best 5 tournament on Lake Fork was 2014.
I call that the year of Keith Combs.
2014, the very first time we have 45 of the best fishermen on earth show up to Lake Fork in the Toyota Texas Bass Classic and have a throwdown for 3 days. It was the greatest total 3-day wait at tour level bass fishing that has ever happened.
And it wasn't even close.
The first time, well, there was 3 days on Falcon that were kind of close.
Well,
the all-time record for 4 days is Lake Falcon. It's 130 pounds.
Right.
On Lake Fork in 3 days, okay, Keith Combs won with 110 pounds. Now, you can divide 110 by 3 and see what that average is, okay? 110 by 3, that's going to be right at a 37-pound average per day, okay? If we would have had a 4-day event, all Keith Combs needed was 20 pounds to break the record, and he's averaging 37. I think he would have got there. And if he didn't, Stetson Blaylock, who was a few pounds behind him, would have got there.
Correct.
And if neither one of them didn't, Russ Lane, who was in third place with 100 pounds, would have got there.
Yep.
Because even Russ Lane was only 30 pounds from the 4-day record in 3 days, and he was averaging 33 pounds a day.
That's right.
One of those 3 guys would have got there on that 4th day. Okay? Think about that, folks. I mean, really digest that. All these years of tour level bass fishing, okay, and the first time they have a true best 5 format hit Lake Fork with the best fishermen on earth, and it's only half the field. It's only half the field of a normal Bassmaster or FLW event.
Right.
It's only 45 guys. But the first time they do one of these type of tournaments on Lake Fork, it's the greatest fishing they've ever experienced. It's the biggest weights they've ever seen. Never seen anything like it before. Like, does everybody realize what we're saying there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's...
Like, all these years of fishing tour level in Lake Fork, the first time they come, it's like, boom, we're the best.
Just think about if they'd have had this way in the boat format in the early 90s.
When Lake Fork was at its peak.
Right.
So let's address that a little bit.
I mean...
Lake Fork is not the same lake it was in 92. It's not.
No.
It's not. Okay? Yes, what happened in the early 90s is something that nobody's ever seen in bass fishing history.
And we may never see it again.
One of the reasons we call it the greatest bass lake of all time is because of what happened from 1990 to 1998-ish, was something that the bass fishing world just never seen. Random people would go to Lake Fork, and most of them, or a lot of them, would catch a 10-pounder.
Yeah.
There was one day when we had 2 share lunkers turned in the same day. 2 13-pounders got turned in the same day from a public body of water. From a 27,000-acre public body of water, 2 13-pounders got turned in by random Joes on the same day. Like, what?
Who does that?
Nowhere.
Yeah.
The Goat Lake.
That's right. So I'd like to address this because I've been staring at this for a minute. So on April 1st of 1989, how would you like to be Stan Moss? Because at this point, Mark Stevenson still had the lake record and the state record.
Okay.
At that time, Mark Stevenson's state record was 1767.
Okay.
Stan Moss weighs in one that goes 1764.
Oh, God.
And
3/100
and it's
state record.
and it's a half inch longer, too.
And what's crazy is we know Barry St. Clair. We know his name.
Right.
Everybody knows his name. We know Mark Stevenson. Everybody knows his name. People don't even know Stan Moss. Like, I know about that fish.
Right.
I didn't realize how close it was, but I don't think of Stan Moss the same way as I think those other 2 guys. And he literally was 3, like, that's like a drop of water that fell off the fish before you put it on the scale. You know what I mean?
And then let's talk about Jerry L. New. On August 29th of 1990, 1763.
Oh, in August? Dude.
In August.
How big was that fish in January?
Dude, at 26¼ inches.
Yeah. Well,
So-
what about the floater?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
The
we haven't talked
floater.
about the floater.
There's a replica mount in Oak Ridge Marina. I believe that was 91 or 92.
Yeah,
when
it
they
was
found
early
that.
90s, yeah.
There was a floater that was found dead, and the story goes the fish had like 1.5 to 2.5 pounds of flesh eaten off of it by turtles.
That's right.
But they weighed it anyway. It weighed 19.62 pounds, missing 1.5 pounds of flesh. Folks, this is a 21-pound bass. It's 20 plus for sure.
And if you've never seen this fish, walk over by the big swim baits at Oak Ridge Marina,
Yes.
and this is the exact replica.
It's a
based
replica,
off measurements.
yeah, of that fish that they pulled out that was a floater.
This sucker is 2.5 foot tall.
Tall.
I
Yeah.
mean, it is.
I don't know if it's 2.5 foot, but it's real tall.
Yeah, it's
It's 18 inches tall. Like
every bit of it.
And what's funny is you see these replicas on these walls, and they look big.
Right.
They do look big.
Right.
But to me, I always see a replica mounted. I'm like, yeah, it looks big, but it doesn't like that much bigger than like fish you've caught.
Right.
But if you ever, and don't touch it because you don't want to touch a replica.
Correct.
But put your hand right up next to it.
Yeah.
Especially like that 19-pounder or the state record one that's over at Lake Fork Marina and the entrance to Tiffany's.
Yep.
Put your hand right up next to it, like almost like you're gonna by its belly, just its belly alone. Just put your hand right up next to it, and it gives you a scale of what you're dealing. And all of a sudden, you go, "Oh, that's way bigger than anything I've caught. Like way bigger. Like these fish are ginormous, man,
Dude. Every time I make it a point, I launch at Oak Ridge all the time. I just like launching there. And
when you come up from Tyler, so
right.
yeah.
And I look at that fish every time I go in there, and I'm just like, everybody that I'm with, I ask him, "How'd you like to hook into that?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Man, I really don't know that I would. I don't know that I'd be able to handle it."
We're gonna need a bigger boat, bigger net. We're gonna need bigger everything.
Dude, you'd have to pull that thing out with a backhoe.
Yeah, it's
You need a bucket.
So Lake Fork isn't, what it was. It's not that. There's not 13-pounders popping out every week in the spring. That's not happening. Richard McCarty caught like 3 over 13 back in the 90s. There's nobody catching 3 over 13 out there anymore.
No.
In their career, like that's not happening.
Right.
With all that being said, as recently as 2014, it's the best tour level event that's ever happened. As recently as last week, it's a 41-pound bag for a couple guys from Kansas fishing with a guide.
Yeah. I mean, you don't just do that anywhere else.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, my first morning, my first day as a full-time bass fishing guide, I have a woman who could fish. I'm not knocking, like she can fish. She can throw bait. She's throwing bait, catches all that. Catches a 10.3 on a water plopper. By far the biggest fish her husband had ever seen.
Right.
By far. And I mean, she's just throwing a water plopper in the back of a pocket in May and catches a 10.30. It still does these things. This lake still does these things that just make you go, that's not normal.
Yeah.
That's not something you see anywhere else.
No. It's not.
So, I know I had a day years ago. I was fishing with, and this was before I was guiding. I was just out fishing with the guy I was buddies with, and he was an older guy. And he was crappie fishing, and we were bass fishing. Then he pulled up on this bridge pile and starts crappie fishing, and he hooks into a crappie, and then his line gets heavy, and this fish starts pulling, drag a bass, ate his crappies. What happened?
Right.
And got him down around the piling or something. He broke him off. He throws in there, catches another crappie. And this time he's like reeling that crappie fast as he can.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, he reels that crappie up to the boat, and there's like 3 of them behind it, bro. And all 3 of them are over 10 pounds.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, whoa. So I start fishing around looking for something,
Yeah, I need something big.
and I find he's got this big saltwater looking fluke style soft plastic jerkbait deal. Big wide bodied, tall bodied thing. Put it on a 7/0 hook with the hook point exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you keep catching them crappie. And he would reel them crappie at the boat, and I start throwing this thing and twitching it from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally got the timing right where as they drove by, I got it in front of one and popped it, and it eats it. And bro, like every time he would catch this, the only time I've ever seen this, but every time he brought a crappie to the boat, there'd be at least one over 10 with that, like following that crappie trying to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Every time he caught a crappie.
And these aren't small crappie.
No, these are keeper crappie.
Right.
Every single time he'd reel this out, won't be with it. Well, I finally get one to bite this little goofy looking jerkbait deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a 7/0 hook, and I've got a big old rod, and I've got braid, 65-pound braid. Man, and I learned a good lesson. I flip that deal in there, that fish eats it, it swim with it, and boom, I pop him, and the fish bends me over. Like, not like I've been over to fight the fish. Like, the fish pulled me down.
Right.
Because I have no give on this setup.
Yeah.
Big rod, big braid, blah, 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 7/0 hook. The fish bends my whole body forward. I never thumb the spool. There's no drag, nothing. And the fish comes off. Probably the second strongest fish I've ever felt. But I don't know how big this fish was. It was probably 11 or 12 pounds. It was over 10 for sure.
Right.
And I pull that hook in, and there's a piece of meat, little white meat from that fish's mouth. That fish pulled so hard it ripped a chunk of its own flesh off, getting away from me. Huh?
They breed them mean out there, boy.
What I learned is you get a big fish hot beside the boat, you better thumb that spool, Jack, if you ain't got your drag set.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you better be ready to thumb that spool quick. Because it happens fast.
Oh, yeah.
And they're strong, way stronger.
Especially if they can still close their mouth.
But that day was unbelievable. I promise you, I saw easily 10 fish over 10 pounds. I laid my eyes on them that day and caught none of them. You know, like, it just, man, it was it was mind-boggling to see how many fish over 10 pounds were sitting on one bridge piling.
You know, I pretty much do a drive-by on a lot of those pilings and graph them every time I go to Lake
I
Fork.
know, man.
Just because, I mean,
Yeah.
how can you not?
I mean, yeah, that's a great piece of structure for big fish to live on, and the crappie coming in there, and the fish eat the crappie. I mean, that's definitely a thing on Fork where those big fish will kind of target those crappie. But yeah, man, that's the deal. That this lake just continues to prove itself over the years and prove the point that it is still, even though it's not at its peak, even though it can humble you and make you want to sell all your fishing stuff, it is still, without a doubt, the greatest trophy bass fishing lake of all time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can't be argued.
if you want to try to argue that some other lake is, I would love to hear some data behind those lakes and tell me why that lake is the greatest trophy bass fishing lake of all time. I've heard people say Falcon's a better lake than Fork. Is it? The lake record at Falcon's 15. I don't know how many fish have been caught over 15 at Fork.
All right.
I mean, what's the 50th biggest bass in the state of Texas?
1545 out of Choke Canyon.
So we know there's been at least 30 fish bigger than the Falcon fish caught in Fork. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
At least 30 of them bigger than the lake record. So, no, Falcon, you're not the greatest trophy bass lake of all time. Is there times when Falcon gets hot that it's a better lake than Fork? Yep, it sure is. But when it comes to being a trophy bass lake, an all-time trophy bass lake, Falcon's not even in the same realm is Lake Fork.
No, so I'm sitting here scrolling through it, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm right real quick before I go to the. Okay. So Lake Falcon has the 38th biggest bass caught in the state of Texas.
The 38th. And how many of those Lake Fork fish are below that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so 22 bass out of Lake Fork bigger than the lake record at Falcon. 22.
So let's argue about it, right?
Yeah, like you're not the greatest trophy bass lake of all time.
And Amistad has a bigger fish than the one at Falcon.
Yeah, Falcon is a great lake.
No, it is. Believe
Falcon,
me.
when it gets right, is as good as any lake in the country.
Correct.
But over the years and over time, Falcon has not produced the trophy bass that Fork or even to some extent Amistad has.
Conroe's got a bigger state record, or state record, lake record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lake Austin has a bigger lake record. Possum Kingdom has a bigger lake record.
And that's the deal. All these lakes are kicking out like one or two of these. There's just no other lake that's kicked out 30 of them.
The one that,
or even 5 of them.
The one that shows up more than any other lake than Fork on the top 50 is Caddo.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Caddo is probably the most underrated trophy bass fishery. Probably the most underrated. It's really good. Caddo's got 316s, doesn't it?
Yeah, Caddo's got quite a few.
Yeah. Caddo's got 316s, I think.
Yep, the 1601, a 1607, and a 16.17.
Yeah, so Caddo is definitely a very underrated trophy bass fishery. There's no doubt about it. Problem with Caddo, problem for me with Caddo is it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's a long drive, and I've got to drive past a whole lot of good water to get to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I've got to go past Lake Fork. I've got to go past all these smaller lakes. Used to, I had to go past Monticello. I got to go past Welch. I got to go past Lake of the Pines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all these little small city lakes we got around here that are so good. I got to drive past all those. Like, I've got to bypass a lot of good fishing water to get to Lake Caddo. Therefore, right. I never end up getting there. I've been there once. You know, I've gone fishing there once. I loved it. It's a great lake. I love fishing Caddo. It's fun. It's a fun place to visit. It's a really good big fish lake. It is. Caddo's an unbelievable big fish lake. Yeah,
I've definitely got it on my list, but I mean, it's like you said, it's hard
so
to drive
far
past.
Out there.
It's
so
hard to drive
there.
past all these other
and
ones.
You got to go past all the other ones. That's right. Yeah, I mean that's the deal, man. And golly, you know, it's like even that, like none of them are even in the same conversation as far as greatest trophy bass lake of all time. Nope. None of them.
Dude, I'm telling you, like, you know that day Jonathan was talking about his 40-pound day?
Yeah.
I had a day with an ex-girlfriend of mine one time in Birch Creek.
We talking about Caitlin and spinnerbait?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I had a day in there where within 30 minutes we had 4 fish in a boat over 6 pounds. And it was just like,
yeah,
and she's
like, she fishes, but she's not like a fisherman.
Right.
Like, she doesn't fish a lot.
And she catches a 912.
Yeah.
On a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Ironically, that was in the same pocket that woman caught that 10-pounder on.
Really?
Same pocket. Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, like that's the kind of, like, that day right there, like, I used to fish Fork 3 days a week, every week.
Yeah.
I'd go up Friday night, I'd stay the weekend, I'd fish Saturday, Sunday, and drive home late Sunday night, go back to work Monday.
Yeah.
And, dude, there were days where I'd be driving home Sunday going, man, there ain't no more fish in that lake. I don't know what happened to them, but they're gone.
There's a hole in the dam. They all swim out.
Yeah, that's right. And then
they open the gates and all the fish went with it.
But then you have a day like that, and you're like, that's why I keep coming back.
That's right. Absolutely. It is the allure of that trophy bass factor that just doesn't exist anywhere. It's just, man, you almost feel it when you get out of the truck. When you pull into the boat ramp and you get out of the truck, it's like you can feel it in the air, dude. Like,
oh, dude, I get goosebumps.
It is a legendary lake. It's as legendary as it gets. Getting to fish it every day, you can kind of lose perspective on that a little bit. Man, it's good to sit down and talk about this and think about it. It gets me fired up to go back out there tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Because it just gives you, it kind of brings you back down to.
It is easy fishing it every day like I do now for years. To lose the perspective on what exactly you're getting to do. Right. Where you get to go fish every day.
Because I'm sure you've had days out there where you've gotten your truck afterwards and be like, man, this like sucks. Like, it happens.
Yeah.
But it doesn't suck. It actually far from sucks.
I've settled into, the lake doesn't suck. I think sometimes I suck.
Well, yeah, you'll get that on the big
sometimes
jobs.
We suck as fishermen. Like, right. Y'all suck, I suck, he suck. We all suck as fishermen sometimes. Hey, another perspective, that 2014 tournament, and when I have tough days at Fork, I try to remember this. at 2014 tournament where they're experiencing the best fishing they've ever experienced. At that time, Kevin Van Dam was the best fisherman on planet Earth, like by a lot.
Oh yeah,
by a lot. He was hands down the best, and this is the best fishing they've ever experienced. And that first day of that tournament, he caught 2 fish for 5 pounds.
That's right.
If KVD, at the peak of his powers, can go 2 fish for 5 pounds when they're experiencing the best fishing they've ever experienced in the history of the tour, we can all zero, baby.
That's right.
Anytime.
That's right.
Anytime we can all zero. Because guess what? Newsflash, I'm not as good as KVD.
I'm not either.
Neither are y'all, unless you're watching, Kevin.
You are as good as Kevin.
Unless Jacob Wheeler or somebody like that's watching, y'all aren't as good as KVD either. Okay.
Or methylate.
Methylate, if you're watching, maybe you can make an argument, but the rest of you guys, y'all aren't as good as Kevin.
That's right. That's right.
So if he can do 2 for 5, we can all go out to Lake Fork and zero anytime. It can happen. So, man, that was a fun topic. You guys, drop some comments. Let us know, man. Let us know what you thought about this. Did we do a good job making the argument for the greatest trophy bass lake of all time?
It's just an easy argument, man. I feel like.
I don't really feel like there is an argument. It's just kind of statements of facts, and it's kind of irrefutable evidence.
I literally just read something off Wikipedia. Like, that's what it felt like. You know what I mean?
It's just there's nothing to really refute there. Like there's so much data that goes towards how great it is, and even recent data that makes it where like there's nothing to argue.
Yeah, it's like the fishing Bible.
There's just nothing to argue.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was great. All right, guys, that's it, man. Drop them comments. Let us know what you thought. We appreciate you watching tonight. As always, on the Fish Live podcast, right here on Your Lake Fork Guide. Chris, do that thing you do.
Y'all be safe out there on the lake, man.